Hey guys, Weeb here. Today we're going to be doing a video on the Archer class in Astellia. This is going to be a rather in-depth guide to give you all the information that you need to successfully play the Archer. Okay, so first up, let's have a look at its pros. So we have a solid single target rotation. As you can see here, I have 6 abilities that I'm going to be using as part of my single target rotation that is not an opener. We have a solid AoE rotation, so basically we have about 5 to 6 abilities for AoE depending on the situation. We have a low mana rotation, including a low mana opener, including Colossal Shot, Falcon Shot, and these single target abilities down here. And we also have a powerful buff that increases accuracy for our entire party. Okay, so let's now have a look at the weaknesses. So the weaknesses I personally believe for the sniper to be is sniper. So when you use sniper, when you can run around and you can dash like normal, you have decent speed, but when you use the sniper mode, you're slowed down and you can no longer dash. So if you're standing in a boss mechanic and you've already used evasive arrow to jump back, you're not really going to have many escape mechanics to get out of an AoE. And if you're in the middle of it and you don't cancel sniper mode, you're going to get walloped. Something else to note as well is that sniper mode has a long cooldown. So if you use sniper mode and then reactivate it immediately to get out to dodge a boss mechanic, your sniper mode is going to be down for 60 seconds. So your damage is going to be quite limited. So if you're not very good at managing when bosses are going to use abilities and be able to preemptively know when they're going to use their abilities, you're going to struggle when using sniper. Okay, so the next thing I dislike about the Archer is that some of its abilities require you to knock down mobs. Specifically, the Colossal Shot and the Falcon Arrow. Now, in their own right, these are both incredibly powerful, and we will talk a little bit about them a little bit later on, but they require you to knock down or have the enemy faint, which doesn't work on bosses. You can't knock down bosses, so you're losing damage right out the gate on your single target ability simply because you can't apply the debuff. I'm really not a fan of that, but I don't really see anything that can be done about it. Okay, so let's talk about a single target rotation. So first up is our bowler arrow and our rapid shot. Basically, you're going to expose weakness them, and you're going to use rapid shot to do more damage because they're exposed weakness. Next up is barbed arrow. It's going to make them bleed, do a bit of damage, and then you're going to follow it up by eagle shot, which is going to shoot multiple arrows at one target. Keep in mind, one target, and do more damage because they are bleeding. And then your third part of the rotation, which is more of a bit of a filler, is strongbow, which is basically an active, which makes it so when you shoot your spiral arrow, it'll shoot 2 arrows every time. So it's a 3-part combo, and so instead of shooting 3 arrows, it's going to shoot a total of 6. So let's have a look at it. So first up, we're going to open with bowler. So this is going to slow them when they're running towards you. This is going to do more damage. Now we're going to bleed him. Now we're going to shoot. Now we're going to use our buff, and then we're going to spiral arrow, and it's going to double shoot. As you can see, that's a basic combo that you can do on the Archer class, which does work against any boss that I believe that I've come across, because exposed weakness and bleed does apply to bosses. Okay, so let's have a look at that sniper mode that I was talking about. So sniper mode, usually used at the beginning of the fight or just after a boss does its big mechanic, because hopefully it won't do it again straight away. Usually combined with a powerful opener, including Colossal Shot and Falcon Arrow. Just keep in mind that you can't dodge while you have it, so you're definitely going to want a key that you can reach quickly to get out of sniper mode so you can dodge. Again, that may be changed in Global. You may be able to dash, or they may fix something above it, but sniper, just this ability by itself makes the Archer class unfun in my personal opinion. Everything else is great, but the sniper itself, not very fun. Okay, so next up, let's have a look at the Hammer Shot and Colossal Shot. So earlier we mentioned that Colossal Shot has to have them stunned or fainted targets to do extra damage, and it does do a significant more amount of damage if you do this combination. So you're going to stun them, and then you're going to use Colossal Shot. So this is going to be used on mobs when like leveling up or something like that, but again, can't really be used on bosses. As you just saw, it hit 10,000 damage, which is probably a couple more thousand than what I would have hit had I not stunned the opponent beforehand. Okay, so next up is Lunar Dance and Rising Moon, plus Falcon Arrow from close range to jump back, plus big damage. Will not work on bosses. So here we have Lunar Dance. So Lunar Dance is basically a 3-kick combo which will stun them. And then you follow it up by Rising Moon to allow you to jump back. And because Rising Moon knocks them down, you can then use Falcon Arrow to do more damage. For example, so you have to be close to use Lunar Dance, 3-part kick, then we knock it down, then we use Falcon Arrow when it's knocked down, and you'll do way more damage. Again, can't be used on bosses because they cannot be knocked down, but it's a good way of getting distance on your enemy. You can also combine Rising Moon, the jump back that you saw, and then use Evasive Arrow to jump back again to get a massive distance on the boss immediately. Okay, so that covers the basic single target rotations. Okay, so now that we've talked about the single target rotation on the Archer, let's have a look at its AoE rotation. So here we have Sandmire combined with Raven Shot. Now the reason we do this is because Sandmire slows them down and exposes weakness, and then Raven Shot takes advantage of that and does extra damage. On top of this, you can put Burst Arrow if you wish, but this can also be added to a couple of different combos. So next up we have Incendiary Arrow, which basically burns everyone who enters it, and then continuously does damage while they're inside. Next up we have Volley. Volley does more damage to enemies in a cone that are affected by bleed or fire damage, which is why it's after our fire debuff. And last but not least, we have Maelstrom. So Maelstrom will pull enemies really close together, basically on top of each other, and it works really well with Burst Arrow because Burst Arrow has a limited amount of range that it can hit. Now I'm going to show you how this works. So first up, you're going to lure them in. Okay, as you can see, there's some at the back and some at the front. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the fire at the front. You're going to aim at somebody with maximum HP at the back. Make sure they're full HP. And then use your ability. So as you just saw, because I aimed at somebody in the back, it shot all the ones in the front in a cone. Also, because I shot somebody with full HP, it stopped the ability from preemptively stopping. So let's say, for example, you click a target in the back that's half HP, and you barrage him, and after the third arrow he dies, all your damage immediately stops, the cooldown happens, and you lose the mana, and you just lost out on 2 ticks of damage. So make sure you're always targeting at the back, and targeting the highest HP minion. Okay, so that covers the basic AoE rotation for the Archer. Now let's have a look at some of the support debuff. Okay, now that we've looked at the AoE abilities, I would like to mention a really powerful opener before we talk about the support abilities. So when you're starting a fight, you're going to use Sniper, and then you're going to use Colossal Shot, and then Falcon Arrow. Now, you're probably thinking that you can't stun the enemy if it's a boss, so it's not worth doing. But Falcon Arrow and Colossal Shot by themselves basically have the highest attack power on abilities that you have, and they're very low mana cost, so they're extremely worth using as an opener. For example, you're going to snipe. Colossal Shot, if you get hit, it's going to slow down the cast. That's why you use it as an opener. And you can kind of queue them. 1, and most of their HP is gone. So that's a big combo that you can use at the beginning of PvP if they're not actually on you, or you can use that against the boss to do a tremendous amount of damage right out the gate. Okay, so now that we've talked about the single target opener, let's talk about some of the support abilities. So, Eagle Eyes, as we mentioned, physical, magical accuracy on the target, unbelievably important because accuracy is quite important in this game, more important than you usually have in an MMO. That you're going to, some people in the beta when we were trying to fight the world boss, there was a lot of us there, but we would miss the boss 90% of the time, so we couldn't actually do any damage. It was a total pain. Okay, so next up is Vitality. So Vitality is basically a potion that you can use. It'll instantly heal you, and it works well with healing Astels, so be aware of that. Eagle Spirit, it's basically a get out of free jail card. Whenever you get stunned, you can just basically use it to get out, and then you can combine it with Evasive Arrow, which is the next ability we're going to be talking about, which allows you to jump back. Now, I'm going to show you that combo that I was talking about earlier. Okay, so we're going to use Lunar Dance, 1, 2, 3, stun, Rising Moon, Evasive Arrow, and now we're a massive amount of distance, and then you can use Falcon Arrow if you want. And as you can see, I just got a massive amount of distance when he was sitting down because he was stunned, and then knocked down. Okay. So now let's talk about Rush. It's basically a speed boost that allows you to run a little bit faster. It's quite helpful to dodge that boss mechanic if you feel like you're not really going to get out in time. Aside from that, I don't really have much use for it, and I don't believe there's many Astels that have good abilities to combine with it. So it's not something you're going to be using very often. Now, Regenerate Mana is an ability that you're going to be using all the time. Regenerate Mana is, as it says on the tin, regenerates mana, but it can only be used in combat. A real pain with the Archer is that you'll keep coming out of combat just as the cooldown comes off, but basically, Even if you have to sacrifice DPS, I would spam regenerate mana whenever you can. If a party member is in combat and you are not, you can still use regenerate mana, so keep that in mind. You definitely want to spam it because mana is quite a pain, even on the Archer class, even though it has a lot of low mana rotations. Okay, so that covers the support abilities. Now let's have a look at the skills. So in here, you can apply skills to various different abilities to increase their status effects, increase their status effect chance of hitting, increasing damage, increasing cooldown. I'm not actually going to talk about this in the video because it's a long explanation. All the theory crafting and information on the skills will be below the video in one of the links, so do check them out if you are interested in the skill section. Okay, so next up, let's have a look at the advanced classes. So in Astellia, you can evolve to multiple advanced classes per character, and you can switch class if you do not necessarily like the one that you have joined initially. So first up, let's talk about the Bounty Hunter. So the Bounty Hunter here has a couple of AoE abilities. Shoots a rain of arrows at target to inflict damage several times to all targets within range. Works extremely well with like Incendiary Arrow and your Maelstrom and Incendiary Arrow Sandmire combination. Very, very powerful. Eagle Strike shoots a 3-way arrow at targets to inflict damage and makes all targets in range bleed. Again, extremely powerful and very good AoE trash mob clearing. Next up, we have basically an enhanced Maelstrom, and it'll do damage to them when you pull them in. So basically, you would do like Maelstrom to do damage, pull them all in, then Incendiary Arrow, and then just pump all your AoEs in a circle. And if a mage is doing their job correctly and freezing mobs, you shouldn't really pull aggro, and it should be a really powerful build. Not necessarily as powerful on bosses, but really powerful at dungeons overall. So next up is Hawkeye. So Hawkeye is more of a single target build. We have a shoot a flaming arrow at the target to inflict damage and burn it. Burn inflicts continuous damage. Now, burn, I don't believe does a lot of damage unless you have multiple burns on, say, something like a mage. So I don't actually think that's going to do a lot of damage. Here we have triple arrow. Quickly shoots 3 arrows at target, inflicts additional damage when the caster has strongbow effect. So this is going to work with your strongbow effect that you're going to have up, I believe, like 50% of the time. So it can be quite good in that retrospect, but I don't think it's good as Bounty Hunter, simply because Bounty Hunter will help you clear dungeons faster, and that is a big thing about the game. Here we have Colossal Shot into Phoenix. So Phoenix is basically Colossal Shot, and you do more damage at a distance. And as I mentioned earlier, Colossal Shot is going to be the very first ability you use after Sniper in your DPS rotation on a boss. So it can be really effective if you do that. Something to note though is that if you level up, say, Bounty Hunter to 5 stars and unlock this ability and then change class, you get to keep this ability. If the ability says exclusive, it means you have to be that particular role. For example, if I wanted Blast Arrow, I'd have to be a Hawkeye because it's exclusive. But these last 3 abilities, if you unlock them and then change class, they stay with you. So it is something worth to note. Ranger class. So, the Ranger shoots a blinding arrow at the target to bind them. Prevents skill use. I don't really think this works very well in PvE, so not really helpful. Hurls an arrow at weakening the target, dealing damage and reducing evasion and critical evasion. Now, this could be quite nice, but in and of itself, is it enough to make you give up another one of the classes? I would say no. In here we have basically Awaken Rush, which allows you to enter stealth mode. Could be cool for PvP. Ranger might be neat for PvP. I'm not entirely sure. But personally, I wouldn't take it if you're focusing more on the PvE aspect of the game. Okay, now let's talk about Astels. So, Astels that I would recommend to go with the Archer would be Archer / Sagittaire. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but I personally like it because it increases your physical and magical accuracy of the caster and summon the Astels, which I think is very important because accuracy is very important in this game. Unfortunately, it only works for you and your Astels, who is kind of greedy, but if that's the playstyle you want to run, feel free to use Archer. So next up, let's have a talk about Cancer. So Cancer basically makes it so it reduces the threat of the caster when you use your AoE abilities. So it's a very powerful skill to use, and it also reduces the magical and physical accuracy of the mobs. So this helps your healer and tank, because the tank no longer takes as much damage, so it can pull larger and it can do more damage. So overall, it's more powerful than Archer / Sagittaire on AoE pulls for sure, but not really as great on a boss, I personally think. A little bit of damage reduction, I don't really think it's going to make much of a difference on a boss. So an honorable mention would be Galatia. Galatia is a mage and guardian. Now the reason that Galatia is powerful is because of its special ability. So let's use Galatia's special ability. So Glacier is now going to stun him, and now he's locked in place. If you have multiple people in a party using Glacier, or even a mage who by themselves have 2 AoE freezes, you can basically pull large amounts of mobs, you freeze them, and then when the freeze runs out, you can use Cancer to reduce their physical and magical accuracy, and you can pull much larger groups than you usually would with a tank. Initially, I see people pulling 1 or 2 mobs with a tank, but it's really, you don't need to do it this way if you're using the right combinations. Okay, so let's talk about some AoE Astels. So some AoE Astels I would recommend would be, first up, Vulpeka. Now, Vulpeka works very well with both your AoE abilities that I showed you earlier in the AoE build, and it basically just does straight up damage. So if that's what you're into, there you go. Next up is Serps. Now, Serps works really well because Serps' ability activates when you use Maelstrom. So Maelstrom, I'm not sure if I mentioned very much earlier, but if you use Maelstrom on an enemy, it'll pull the enemy in very tight. Like so tight that they're basically on top of each other. And that's when you use Burst Arrow, because Burst Arrow does decent DPS, but it has a very short range, so you're going to want to use it after Maelstrom. But because Maelstrom activates Serpent's ability, which Serpent's ability puts a poison pool underneath the enemies. Now, Poison Pool doesn't have a very big range, and that's why you want to use Maelstrom to pull them in anyway. And then it'll do AoE poison damage for quite a lot of damage. I would use Serpent if you can get them all on top of each other, but if there's kind of 2 AoE groups where there's archers and whatnot at the back and say melees at the front, there's a bit of a hole in the middle, I wouldn't worry because Maelstrom cannot pull them in, and I would use another Astel instead. That's it for today's video. If you did enjoy the video, please do hit that subscribe button above. If you're looking for an MMO community, do consider joining our community Variety MMOs, where we focus on community inclusion, guides, and community events. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.